Wonderful. So again, thank you to Daniela and Camila for joining us, and Oliver for serving as our interpreter today. The goal of Sister Cities Conference writ large is that as technology improves and language access online improves for live events like this, we would make this event possible to anyone who wants to join in their language. So that is the goal. Maybe by year 5, the technology will catch up to this particular kind of need. So, okay. So our first question, this is a panel on global citizens. And so we're going to start with the first question about exactly that. What does it mean to you to be a global citizen? And Daniela, why don't we start with you? Oliver will do consecutive interpretation.
Hola a todos. ¿Qué tal? Buenos días. Bueno, aquí es buenas tardes. Pues entonces para mí, como soy antropóloga, ¿no? Tengo una visión un poquito ya sesgada sobre lo que es un global citizen, un ciudadano global, ¿no? Pero lo más importante para mí es que el ciudadano global no sea simplemente una persona que consume cosas de varios países, que esté ubicado en un lugar, pero que pueda disfrutar y pueda consumir productos de diversos países, porque es normalmente eso que se imagina de una persona que es muy abierta, ¿no? Que pone que viste ropas de India, que come quinoa de Perú, que, en fin, que es súper, que parece que tiene la mente muy abierta, pero que al final no siempre tiene responsabilidad con esos diversos lugares, ¿no? Entonces sería una persona que sabe de las consecuencias de sus elecciones como ciudadano y claro, de sus elecciones también como consumidor, las cosas que compra, porque estamos en un entorno capitalista, ¿no?
Okay, so I can't hear Oliver.
Me neither. Got that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So good morning, first of all, to everybody, and good afternoon. I mean, it's the afternoon. So as an anthropologist, I have a somewhat immersive view as to what it means to be a global citizen. But I think first and foremost, a global citizen is a person who isn't just someone who consumes things from different countries, but who's also aware and part of those different cultures. You know, I'm not just somebody who will go and eat Indian food or go and eat quinoa from Peru, but rather I'm somebody who, and then I'm actually somebody who has an open mind about where those things come from. You know, there are those people who don't have the open mind and aren't necessarily taking responsibility for their role in the broader world. So I think that's it. More than anything else, a global citizen is somebody who's aware that their choices as a citizen affect the world, and their choices as a consumer, of course, affect the world and these other places, because this is the environment we're living in, and it's a capitalist one.
Thank you. That was a very thoughtful response. Thank you, Daniela. And Camila, what about you?
Yes, good morning, all. For me, global citizenship is a mindset to live on. If we're talking about citizenship, it's like, where do we have a passport? And for me, this mindset is very close to what Daniela said. It's not just to be a consumer, but to be a creator, because you have this phoenix type of overview of cultures. You transcend cultures, space, people, and that you can really not just to, you know, be mindful of where you are, but be mindful of differences and complexities, and still be that curious type to to feel home in many cities. I mean, I've lived in maybe 10, 12 cities throughout my 20 years of living in different countries, in the US, in Finland, in Denmark, across Uzbekistan, where I'm originally from. So citizenship for me is the mindset that opens up myself to the community, local and global, where I'm not only consumer, but I'm also creator of opportunities for others. I'm a unifier as a global citizen. And I feel that this empowering element, especially now when we are feeling populist ideas are dividing us across all different specters, so that identity is not divisive for me. The global citizen identity is something that is multiple, where we can rest on several peers. And this is something that we really need to amplify on right now for young people, for adults, and for also elderly people. We all need to continue our global citizenship.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a wonderful response. And also to bring in the different generational challenges that face us at different points, whether that's bringing your parents to live with you as they get older. Maybe you've emigrated and you need to bring your parents to live with you, sort of what that means from their perspective, or raising children, moving them maybe from one place to another, and how they navigate, right, those cultural and social changes also, with, again, that element of political identity, right? Feeling a part of a community, not having particular rights in a community, having to wait and prove yourself, right, in every place that you live until you're allowed those political rights. So appreciate those nuances also. I do want to ask, so in each of your particular situations, how does your society that you're currently live in, or maybe the one you were from initially, misunderstand the intersections of your identity? And we can start with, we'll start with Daniela again.
Bueno, Barcelona es conocida por ser una ciudad muy abierta, ¿no? En general, ¿no? La visión que se tiene de Barcelona es esta, de que es muy acogedora, pero es verdad también que está dentro de un país que no es de los más ricos, los más desarrollados de Europa. Entonces, claro, tenemos por un lado esto de que puede ser muy abierto, de que para algunas cosas las personas tienen muchas ganas de conocerte y tal, pero también, por otro lado, a veces las políticas no están de acuerdo con la voluntad de algunas personas, ¿no? De esas personas que tienen la mente más abierta, como decíamos. Es verdad que tuve un largo camino que recorrer para dentro de esa sociedad que me acepta de alguna manera, también pudiera tener derechos como ciudadana. Por ejemplo, vivo aquí desde el 2013, he llegado como estudiante, luego he cambiado el tipo de estancia para una residencia con trabajo, pero igual que aunque tenga que contribuya para la sociedad financieramente, no tengo derecho al voto. Hasta ahora no tengo derecho a decidir a quién me gustaría ver en los cargos públicos. Y como es una ciudad que tiene muchos inmigrantes, yo creo que seguramente los políticos que ganan hoy quizás no serían los mismos si nosotros tuviéramos el derecho al voto, ¿no? Y entonces yo creo que es muy importante eso que Camila había dicho antes, ¿no? Sobre también tener una estancia, un nivel de elección, que estamos aquí viviendo y trabajando y contribuyendo, pero al final normalmente nuestra voz no se escucha. Tampoco quiero que la sociedad cambie y se vuelva como una sociedad, que se vuelva Brasil, no es eso que quiero, pero me gustaría poder elegir qué políticos, de qué tipo de política se hace en la ciudad que vivo, porque es el básico. El básico es poder participar de una reunión de escalera, decidir cosas de tu calle, de tu barrio, y luego, claro, de tu ciudad. Entonces estaría bien que pudiéramos, como ciudadanos también, porque vivimos y trabajamos, tener esta opción.
Gracias, Daniela. Oliver?
So, the city that I live in, Barcelona, it's known for being a very open city in general, and so that's the way it's seen. It's seen as being a very welcoming city. That said, it's a city in a country that is not one of the richest, and it's not one of the most developed countries in Europe. So, on the one hand, it's a very open environment, and there are a lot of people who are very open. They want to get to know you. They want to know more about you. But on the other hand, there are policies that are in place that are not necessarily in agreement with that desire of the people to have, an open mind. And it is true, like what you said, that I had a long row to hoe in terms of being accepted in this country, and in terms of getting rights as a citizen. I came to this country in 2013. I came here as a student, and I've actually changed my my residency status to that of being a long-term resident with the right to work. So I am, even though I am contributing financially to the society and in other ways, I still don't have the right to vote. So I don't have the right to decide who holds public office and who represents me in my society. Now, of course, there are a very large number of immigrants in this country. And so I think that if those immigrants had the right to vote and had the right to choose their public officers, there would probably be very different public officers than the ones that are in charge. I do think it's very important to have that kind of status, to be at the level where you can make that choice, because I live here, I work here, I contribute. And at the end, my voice isn't heard. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that I want my society to become Brazil. I'm not saying that at all. But what I would like is to be able to choose my politicians. Choose the politicians in the city that I live in. If I participate in a meeting with the rest of the people in my building, I can make decisions. So that's it. I want to be able to make decisions about the street that I live in, the neighborhood that I live in, and at the end, the city that I live in. Because in the end, we're citizens here in the sense that we live here and we work here. And I'd like to have this option.
Thank you very much. Ashish, so the question thank you for being able to rejoin us. We appreciate you. The question that we're on right now is the question about how does society and misunderstand the intersections of your identity?
Thank you. Sorry, I was, I was unable to. Okay, now can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, I don't know. I was muted by the moderator. Oh gosh, no, please. Not an issue. I think thank you, Daniela and Camilla. India, I'm actually, my name is Ashish. I think I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. So I'll just take about 30 seconds to do that. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashish, and I belong to a city known as Bangalore in India, which is the Silicon Valley, of India, if you can say, the East. And I call myself as a citizen problem solver. Because I work with youth on local civic and environment issues, and how can we really create a community of problem solvers who would not only just solve problems for their neighborhood, but in the process also empathize and build a nation and a world together. So I think that is what we are trying to do: build a community of problem solvers across the nation. To just take on your question, I think as all the countries, India is also very diverse. Not only just language, we have more than 200, 300 languages. we have diverse regions, we have different religions, we have castes, we have many multiple identities, if you can break it down that's that way. But I think uh, like I feel sometimes if there are the experiences are not shared experiences, it's very difficult for people to really connect with someone from, say, another country, another region, or another nation itself, right? Like, so I do recognize my personal experience, quoting from I do recognize my multiple identities as a person. Like, I know that I'm an individual, I'm a family person, I'm a person of my friends, I'm a person of particular language, a particular state, and a nation, and the world. So just I think understanding that we have multiple identities, yet they all can coexist, and not they don't have to compete with each other. I can be proud to be from India, but that doesn't mean that I hate Spain, Italy, or any other country for that matter, right? Like, even not even my neighbor who we have quarrels with now and then. So I think, like, just being able to understand that and being able to coexist with shared experiences, how can we create more and more shared experiences so that people really empathize with one another? And it's as simple as it. Like, I've heard Daniela, and I completely agree with her already. Like, if you live in a city, you contribute to cities well-being and the well-being of the community there, then why not have a say? It's as simple as it. And I think that's what I value how can we create shared experiences based on empathy, and how can we begin that at childhood? Because I think as in when we grow old, our egos grow bigger than us. So how can we create when we are really young these shared experiences, so that we understand our multiple identities? It's not bad to have multiple identities, because I think we get back to the nature of human beings and their behaviors. But how can we understand them, be aware of them, yet live with it? Like, not fight over these fault lines, some would call. Thank you. Like, this is my take on identity.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And Camila, would you like to take a stab at that?
Yes. Nice to meet you, Ashish, and thanks for bringing these shared experiences up. I can build on this. So I work with immigrant community in Finland, so they feel they can belong and build on their identities without having to be fixed. Yeah, I'm a Russian, I'm a Chinese, I'm Swedish, or then, they limit themselves to some professional identity. So because in Finland, we know people rarely engage with conversations with strangers. So you really need to be either so proactive and self-advocate, or then you need to be on the other side of the axis, a super cool introvert, and you're going to manage just fine online, right? But the thing is then, how do you make life worth living in a country which is, dark winters, super dark movies? I don't watch Finnish movies. That's just something, they're just not for me. I get depressed. I need an antidepressant after. But the whole idea is that this country is made for the curious. So my way of, if I just scroll back a little bit, born and raised in Uzbekistan, I did a TED talk about it. My identity was denied because I was grown up to be seen but not heard as a girl. So that was one, for me, this urge to travel the world and like live life on my own terms. So then I'm, transitioned to US and Finland, Denmark at the time. And the whole identity when you adopt a new role, when you relocate, is that your roles change, right? You were somebody there, you're nobody in a new country, need to find new roots, and then you're given identity as a foreigner or as an immigrant or a refugee, even if you were like, really, who am I now, right? So there is this huge role change and reaction to those feelings. And then at the moment, there's like the whole world is fighting for global talent. So how do you build this mobility into ways that people can find their, own footing and pay their taxes? And as Daniela says, I pay taxes. I'm a constructive member of the society, and I should have a political say. And in Finland, we are talking about that demographical crisis, so that we need to have immigration and welcome the world in Finland and find ways for families to settle down and enjoy all this welfare goodies. And unfortunately, it's really about like, okay, you're only welcome if you pay taxes, but if you can't get a job due to racism and discrimination in the job market, whose fault is this and whose responsibility is it to integrate? And so I think for me, I use 4 ways to really build this global identity to make it work for newcomers. Is that, first of all, yes, identity. I put this book forward. Francis Fukuyama is very cool way how he like transcends this principles of identity when it's dividing, when it's connecting. And first, I say you need to embrace your identity. Where do you belong? How do you build communities? Second, you really need to boost your curiosity. And that empathy, that curiosity is a free energy to really bring you forward and learn everything new. The third element that I teach is the context. So once you have the curiosity and learning, okay, who is who in Finland? Why am I here? The context helps you to really have a conversation, laugh at the same joke. That's the so connecting feeling of, even if I'm not that politically active, I don't come from a country which had democracy, you don't need to start running for political office immediately. And the last one is relevance. So we know that Finland and across Europe is really fighting for global talent compared to US and Asia. But I think when you really find the context and relevance, it's much easier to embrace LinkedIn with 800 million users and really find a way, who are you working for? Who would you like to work for? What kind of employer are you looking at? Because we get identities through others, through our colleagues at work, through anywhere where you really are, engaging yourself and finding your footing. So I think the communities give us our own sense of self. They remind us of capabilities, but also that you yourself are continuously looking at where I can benefit and tap in with my different identities, rather than to build bridges, rather than to disconnect yourself and feel alienated and isolated. And that's a really bad cocktail at the moment with recovering COVID pandemic.
That was a wonderful answer. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I will look up that book. And I love how you said, negotiating the difference between the identity that you get from your community and then the identity that you feel on the inside, and finding that middle ground between those. And I know Daniela has felt this. I know Oliver and I have felt this, as Americans living in Spain, we're treated very different than Nigerians living there. Right. Even if the Nigerian has permanent residency and I'm undocumented, right? I would never get stopped by the cops to show them my papers.
Yeah, some kind of ethnic stigma and profiling kind of hierarchy, which is, I think, in no country is,
immune
to this. Yeah, immune. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. And also building on what you said, I want to ask the next question about, you talked about global talent. So, we're here with sister cities. We have 24 sister cities around the world, starting with Lima in 1964 and Beit Shan, Israel in 2019. So there's a whole lot in between. So in this time where, you need work permits to pretty much go and work anywhere other than the country you were born in or you hold citizenship in, how can our sister city relationships or our international friendships, before they get to the formal stage of being a sister city, one of my goals with sister cities is to build those bridges so that when people find an opportunity somewhere else or are thinking about exploring opportunities somewhere else, they have a natural foothold to start with. So maybe tell me a little bit about your experience with, how did you decide to move to the U.S. from Uzbekistan? Or Daniela, what was it that brought you to Spain initially? Because there has to be not only a push factor, but there's got to be a pull factor, right? Why this place instead of that place? Was it a person that you knew, right? Was it an idea you had? Because you have to start somewhere. Like you said, that context, you have to start with knowing something in order to make that initial step. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And we can start with Daniela.
Oliver, ¿me puedes resumir la pregunta, por favor?
En resumen, la pregunta es, además de relaciones oficiales entre una ciudad y otra, hay muchas relaciones informales antes de llegar a ese nivel de oficialismo, ¿verdad? Entonces, la pregunta es, qué eran los factores, no solo los que te impulsaron a salir de Brasil, sino los que te atrajeron a España y a Barcelona en particular. ¿Había personas, había instituciones? ¿Qué había lo que te atraía allá?
La verdad es que he venido con una situación en comparación con toda la gente que viene del sur para el norte, ¿no? Que sale de América Latina o de África, en fin, o de India y tal, para el norte, viene en una situación súper privilegiada. Yo tenía un buen trabajo en Brasil, tenía un nivel de vida más alto financieramente, económicamente de lo que tengo aquí, y he venido porque quería cambiar mi campo de estudio. Quería hacer el máster en antropología. Entonces vine invitada por una universidad. Es decir, mi universidad tenía un acuerdo con la Universidad de Tarragona, que es aquí al lado de Barcelona, y me he inscrito, claro, me he ofrecido y vine a hacer un intercambio de 6 meses antes y luego la propia universidad me ha invitado. Yo llegué aquí con un privilegio que las personas del sur en general no tienen. Yo estoy completamente consciente de esto y es por eso que intento siempre en mis actitudes, en mis elecciones políticas en España, nunca olvidarme de que yo vengo bien, pero hay gente que viene muy mal. Gente que viene en patera, gente que patera en barcos, ¿no? Ilegales, gente que viene en vuelos ilegales, gente que viene de cualquier manera porque quiere llegar en un lugar mejor. Entonces yo vine en una súper buena condición, vine a estudiar. Entonces, claro, he salido de una sociedad que es bastante machista, que es bastante complicada para una mujer, y he venido a una que me recibió como una ciudadana, no, como una persona normal. Que claro, hay diferencias entre hombres y mujeres, claro, no soy ingenua. Hay diferencias entre blancos y negros, pero con un nivel mucho más pequeño de lo que encontramos en Brasil. Principalmente en la región de Brasil de donde vengo, que es el sur, donde hay mucha gente de mi color y más clara, mucha gente rubia, mucha gente blanca, y entonces yo sé que he visto, conozco lo que es el racismo. Y el racismo que se vive en Europa es un racismo que te dicen explícitamente, ¿no? Al final te dicen explícitamente. En Brasil es todo implícito y velado. No, la gente no habla sobre racismo, aunque 80% de la población sea negra, ¿no? O en fin, que sea considerada negra. Entonces, lo que me hizo salir de Brasil era un poco también porque me gusta viajar, me gusta conocer y tenía ganas de hacer esto, ¿no? Tener una nueva experiencia, pero también salir un poco de esta condición de ser simplemente una mujer que va a tener hijos y va a procrear y va a cuidar de la casa, ¿no? Cuando yo sabía que podía mucho más que esto. Y cuando llegué aquí he visto que hay lugares donde se puede hacer esto, que no estoy obligada a ser una ama de casa toda mi vida, solo porque he nacido mujer. Pero yo estoy consciente completamente de que hay gente que tiene mucho peores condiciones que la mía, principalmente las mujeres negras en Barcelona.
Gracias, Daniela.
So, I honestly, when I came here, I came here in a very privileged situation. Not like a lot of the people who come from the South. I mean, from the Americas, from Africa, from India. I came to this country in a very privileged situation. So first of all, back in Brazil, I was in a very good situation. I had a good job, and I had a much higher quality of life, actually, than the one that I ended up having here. But I came here. What pulled me here was that I wanted to change my field of work. I wanted to do a master's in anthropology, and I was actually invited to come here by the university. There's an agreement. There's a relationship between my university and the University of Tarragona, which is here right near Barcelona. And so I actually came here for an exchange program for about 6 months. And then the university themselves invited me to come back and do this master's. So I understand that when I came here, I arrived here in a very privileged situation, much more privileged than many of the people from the South, and I'm aware of this. I always try to keep this in mind whenever I'm making decisions, whenever I'm sort of thinking politically. I want to keep in mind that I came here in a good situation, but there are a lot of people who come here in a very, very bad situation. There are people who come here on rafts, in illegal boats, illegal flights. They get here however they can because they're trying to get to a better place. So the society that I was leaving is a fairly male supremacist society. Whereas the society that I came to is one that welcomed me as a person, just a normal person, didn't treat me differently. Of course, there are differences in the way you're treated. In Europe, there are differences between the way men and women are treated. There are differences between the way white people and black people are treated. But in general, the racism that you face here in Europe is much smaller than the racism that is faced in Brazil, and especially in the region of Brazil that I'm from. I'm from a region of Brazil that have a lot of people that look like me, and then a lot of people who are much whiter than me, a lot of blonde people, a lot of very white-skinned people. And so you see the racism and you're aware of it. The type of racism that you experience in Europe is explicit. They'll say it to you, right? Whereas in Brazil, it's implicit and it's always covered up. And it's never talked about. It's never discussed, even if 80% of the country is black or is considered to be black. So these are some of the reasons that I wanted to leave Brazil. I also wanted to leave Brazil because I like to travel. I like to get to know the new things and have that experience. But one of the reasons that made me leave Brazil was trying to avoid this condition of simply being a woman who's going to have children, right? Who's going to procreate and take care of the house. And I wanted to see if there were other places in the world where you didn't just have to do that. And I got here and I found out that there is a place where you can do things other than that. So that said, I do try to keep in mind of the many people who don't have that experience and who are in much worse conditions than me, especially Black women in Barcelona.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniela. Racism is also implicit in our part of the United States. It's more explicit in some other places, but it's where we are, it's very implicit, and it's hard to address if you can't name it, if people can't call it out. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And I will say, I also felt like in Barcelona, women are professionally treated as much more of an equal than they are here in the US. The wage gap for women here in the US is just incredible. And I did feel like professionally, it was easier to be taken seriously and as a intellectual equal. So I also appreciate you bringing up that point. Camila, let's go to you next.
All right. Yeah, I recognize myself in Daniela's story. This movie, the big fat Greek wedding, Mr. Portocalis says, "Get married, make children." This is what's been feeding also in my brain. And by 18, I was supposed to get married. And now I got married when I was 33. So I was like married 10 years after when I was supposed to marry. My curfew was 23 in modern Uzbekistan, and unfortunately still is. And then I'm 37 now, and I can tell you I'm an expecting mother, and I have a child on my premises without the social pressure. And I just wish we just had a girl child day, right? There's 12 million girls getting married underage. I just really hope that my child has a better life and doesn't have to see this injustice. And we're living in Europe. We need to make our voices heard because storytelling really builds up the empowerment of girls and women elsewhere and men. I moved due to opportunities. I moved because I didn't belong in my own community. I didn't grow up in a safe home. So for me, home is not necessarily a safe space. But moving to Denmark was coincidence because, again, talking about your passports, it was difficult to go back to US after exchange. So Europe was suddenly closer. And yes, I turned into this a global citizen because you could, on student jobs, you could travel Europe, you go with exchange students on summer breaks, you clean offices here, you deliver newspapers, you do bartending, all these nice things which were actually given to you as a student. A lot of people in many countries, they don't have student jobs and student income, so their own parents' neck, right? And at the moment, if we're talking about mobility, there is a lot of, actually Europe is suffering because of this immigration laws, that passports were created after Second World War that was like telling who has good education, who gets to cross the country. And now, because immigration, especially in Finland, it's been discussed forever. Germany, take it again, that you cannot get your families, even if you're an investor or, really hoping to move to Finland to make business and bring investments. So there is an idea that for me to make, I listened to a new TED Talk this summer by Karoli Hinrichs. She's from Estonia, and she works for making immigration smart. She says passports need a digital upgrade. So, Estonia is the first country in the world to do these electronic IDs. And she says that if you remove these passports with paperwork and all that superfluous amount of work that does by immigration, you could, save, was it $1.3 trillion, and save people from hunger and reduce people's misery of moving locations and finding the better grounds. And so I do recommend, I'll write in the link, it's absolutely thought-provoking to make all our work, making cities inclusive, promoting citizens to move to your future citizens also to move to your environment. So what I think really helps is the opportunities and ease of moving around. Of course, some people get red carpet as an engineer and specific specialist, and majority of people don't get the red carpet treatment. They just sit in the police and get the queue. And I've been there outside Danish police department. It was absolutely undignifying. Now I'm a Nordic citizen. I have all the privileges. So I've been on both sides of the equation, and I do have this deep understanding of deep-seated issues of gender-based violence that also Finnish women face, Uzbek women face, and then also still considering that European equality champions are here in the Nordics. So for me, I push Finnish community with igniting them to say, listen, guys, you're equality champions. You are known for quality and efficiency. Think about Nokia and Oura rings. So how can you not make migration smart if you also think about ways to collaborate? And cross-sectoral collaboration is something that I really see. And I've been happy to work with that from Helsinki City. So Helsinki City is ambitious. They do these Helsinki freedom campaigns. And it all looks great on this side, right? But the dark side is that if you have a national unemployment at 7.2%, the immigrants, which is 10,000 internationals, they face unemployment, which is over triple, right? So we need to find the barriers and see how we can include artists, we include cities, we include employers, NGOs to really unlock this through social capital, through support networks, through equity programs, and there's lots to do. Tomorrow we have a conversation on this in Helsinki. So I think majority of the now people are moving for opportunities and create livelihood. Again, I bring in the COVID.
Thank you. And I just want to say, Daniela tiene que salir. So Daniela has to leave at 9 because she has to go to work. So gracias, Daniela. Mucho gusto. And Daniela, can you just put your email in here in case anyone has follow-ups for you? Appreciate it. Daniela is super. She's wonderful. So I really appreciate her. It's true, you are taking time to be with us today. But I do want to go a little bit longer just because we were had some problems in the beginning. I know Oliver has to leave too. Thank you, Oliver, for your excellent service.
Thank you, Daniela. Nice to meet you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Sorry for my bad English.
Ciao, ciao.
No,
See you.
right.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Oliver.
I also think it's really, really important to understand that, as English speakers, we tend to think that everyone else speaks English, or
Yeah.
that if they don't speak English, somehow it should be our English should be accommodated. So I think it's really important that we invite people who don't speak English to participate in this conference, and make accommodations available, which is why, again, the language access part, talking about global citizenry also.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel very conflicted about languages dying and English becoming the new lingua franca, but we have this term lingua franca for a reason, right? Because it used to be French, right? It used to be different. It used to be Greek, used to be different things.
Yeah.
And so accepting that things change, humans evolve, societies change, and there are things that just naturally have to go by the wayside to make room for new things. And I also really loved your point about gender-based violence in Finland. So one of my questions about being a global citizen is, it comes sort of back to Ashish's point of empathy, right? Of creating shared experiences. That point about gender-based violence in Uzbekistan and in Finland. I personally know a woman who suffered extreme violence from her husband in Finland and left.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it's a problem in Mexico, right? It's a problem in the US. It's a problem lots of places all over the world. So how do we use, for example, things like this? Because not everyone has the resources to move, or has the inclination, or was raised in a place where that's something that they want to pursue actively. So how do we make people who haven't shared this type of life experience also understand why it's important to include new people in our communities through building those relationships on shared experience? And Ashish, I'll let you start.
No, definitely. Thank you. In my opinion, like you mentioned, right? I'll just leave. I'll take from the thread where you left. To continue with, like, not everyone would have that opportunity to be able to experience, diversity, if they're born in a village in India, like if you take for an example. But um, but my opinion is, I think wherever we are, we should be able to, within that limited sphere, be able to create shared experiences. For example, I live in Bangalore city, but we do have people from across India who come and live in the city. In fact, like, you can say majority of the population now in Bangalore are from not native to Bangalore. They are from across India. And I think people who are native to Bangalore always have this complaint that, hey, like, y'all are taking over our culture, A, B. And and I think uh, it's always a double-edged sword, according to me. Like, how do we really, I think the root of the problem, according to me, is how can we, create more jobs, so that that problem is addressed. The problem isn't like more people coming in. Like, how can actually governments do something to address the jobs, because it's people are looking for that, actually not this. But and I think, like, if you were speaking of English being the dominant language. If you take India, uh, we have 22 recognized national languages, that those are recognized. Those are just recognized. But we have 200 to 300 languages and dialects. And I myself can speak over 4 languages, which are native to this country. So, like, that's the reason, like, I think we should be and for me, the starting point, if you say, are like the student exchange programs, right? Like, even Camilla was mentioning, like, I think these are spaces where we can create shared experiences. See, I've studied in a school where I had like 80% of actually 80% of people who foreigners who study in the country, for the lack of a better word, people from other country who study in Bangalore, are from the Southeast,
Okay.
Asian nations. but other 20% are from across the world, in Bangalore specifically. So I think I had friends from Nepal, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Africa, some countries within Africa, Thailand. We had East Asian students as well. So I think that created some kind of bonding, some kind of understanding of each other's culture, appreciate each other's culture, language. It's very important for this to really happen, and in whatever spaces we can create this, I think it's absolutely important. Just giving a small example, the organization that I work with is known as a Reap Benefit. What we do, a simple thing, how to build empathy. What we do is we take children who study in the private schools to the public schools, because in India public schools are not that great, and unlike America, where public schools are actually better when put across other nations. But here it isn't. Everyone aspires to send their children to a private school here. So we actually create a shared experience between private and public schools, where children come together and work on a particular community issue, not a private issue, a community issue. Like for example, say there's sanitation problem, there's a water problem, there's a solid waste management problem. They take that up to solve it together in their community. So, and when they leave, when the students actually leave, they leave with a sense of purpose, a sense of agency, a sense of gratification, that they understand what it is to be on the other side, right? And that is important, and that's the starting step. And we have many students who have associated with us when they were in school, continue even now to engage on these issues. Like how
Right.
can they engage on social issues, how can they engage on issues concerning community, because that is the space where you can create shared experience. I can work in my home, I'll only be limited to my family, but how can I come to the community where real problem lies? And I think that is where we call something known as applied empathy. Empathy is not you sit in your own spaces and you'll experience empathy. You come there,
Yeah.
get your hands dirty. Only then, and that's why we added, a word before empathy known as applied empathy. Apply it, come, experience it. Experience teach you, what really it is to understand the other person. So I think these are small initiatives that has to begin wherever you are, because not everyone will have the opportunity. For me, like I had the fortunate of at least visiting one or two countries back then, because my father had money then. Now he doesn't. So whenever he had, I think I just made use of it and traveled one or two nations. But yeah, I think not everyone would have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Camila.
Yeah, it was really inspiring to hear Ashish applying empathy in this. I call it social capital exchange. It's with this whole mixing different groups of people which otherwise wouldn't meet. And social capital is actually been written a lot about, but becomes still like a UN language expression. So we need to all make this tangible. And I luckily heard this conversation from a US-based researcher who said there is actually proof that social capital exchange leads to economic outcomes. And I'm like, yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
So we need to make friendships, we need to make connections, we need to really reach out and find what really makes us human. And I welcome you all to celebrate Global Dignity Day. I work as an, with the Finnish branch. We're in over 90 countries now. So with the dignity, Donna Hicks, she's a Harvard professor. She wrote a book on how do we align our differences by recognizing dignity. She looks the first step with the 10 key elements is that accepting person's identity and letting them speak without being judging them. And, that's really like elementary thing that we also read in our constitutions. But so every year we have a Global Dignity Day. I will give you also the precise date now in the comments. And for me, what really works, and I'm inspired by Joe and Global Cleveland, is that you bring in the city ambassador programs. City ambassador programs, they immerse you, they make you feel ownership of the locality, and being in the space with other people really is empowering. Second thing what works is the cross-sectoral collaboration. Artists makes these things clearly. We always need to involve artists, especially now. we need inspiration, energy, and emotions. It takes emotions to raise a hand and do something. And then what also works is that those networking communities, which are so easy to combine, so they're not forced partnerships, but they're wanted partnerships. So Ashish, you gave an example that they continue doing this stuff because that makes sense. And then there are other things which are, coming from policy level. The fourth, that you have a policy to make this pandemic of gender-based violence. You can have as many policies as possible, but if they don't really trickle down to behavioral and cultural change, these policies are super vulnerable. So I'm thinking, what are the ways to use media, use storytelling, entertainment, and really break this forward, and of course all the city channels, but really involving people, nothing about them without them. I think that's where inclusion comes into the point. I have a problem with cities becoming, like dogmatic places where everyone is celebrating their own city, but there's always the other side of the coin. So I think the empowerment starts with really asking yourself, who are we not involving in this? Who are we not asking from? Because there's no such thing as inclusive design. There's no such thing as inclusive design. And we all, even I'm as the diversity inclusion expert, I can promote gender diversity, I can promote cultural diversity, but I am illiterate in disability. So I need to look out for someone who is an expert in this. So we need to know our unconscious biases and how we don't be blinded by policies, because I think those emotional connections, partnerships, this contact theory, making people be together, they really make these vulnerabilities as gender-based violence also important. On the other hand, all of us three in the room, different issues will matter if we are connected to cancer patients. We're going to work for cancer cause, right? People with gender-based violence will probably do it because it has to be with some kind of lived experience. And if you don't have a lived experience, there's still a way to build empathy through these embodied storytelling events. And that's why I love these dignity talks that we do. We share really brisk, vulnerable stories. Similar to TED Talks, but much shorter. And you have that embodied experience through also playback theater. So I do welcome, check out the playback theater in a way to make those experiences that you never understood, feel it, and then make it visible, something which was invisible, visible, and actually find better solutions to overcome them. So this is something that I've been working on during COVID, because it's been so frustrating. And as a speaker, a lot of events were removed and you needed to adapt webinars. And so how can I preserve my sense of self? So I found these playback theater professionals really inspiring, because they unwrap so much that makes identity just really, you can feel it, and you want to embrace each other through these powerful stories.
That was beautiful. Thank you. That brought up so many issues. Going back to just Daniela's way of getting here through a university exchange. I mean, that's what, and then how you were talking about student jobs, that's one of the ways in which most sister cities have a pretty tangible partnership is with universities, for the reason that as a world, generally, we value educational experiences. We value people learning, even if that doesn't necessarily translate to being able to work.
Right.
We're working on that next part. But we do value education. We value higher education. And so that's one of the easiest ways in which you can gain experience and really expose yourself to new ideas. And it's also at a critical life formation time, right, where you are still moldable as a person, but also mature enough, right, to handle the complex issues that come with, maybe going through some of these experiences. So that was.
But I have a comment on that.
Yeah, please.
Education. I just because I looked up with the Sustainable Development Goals. There's actually an SDG 4, obviously promoting quality education. About 4.7 looks up specifically on global citizenship, and And I think also education needs a change because they're so siloed in a sense that education doesn't change the culture, it reflects the culture. So how can we also be, pushing teachers, professors into spaces where they're not used to be? Like there's tech summits, there is business events, there is, systemic change, policy making. So we feel, I'm really curious how also Finnish education is going to manage, because with the secondary education, there's been a new survey recently that every 6th teacher want to change career because of the hard workload. So nothing is taken to be for granted at the moment. So that we need to, even empowerers need empowerers to.
And I would definitely agree that education reflects a society, particularly at the elementary and secondary level. It's an indoctrination model, period. Whether we're looking at Turkey and the way Erdogan has changed public education over the last 10 years, whether we're looking at the way China teaches, whether, through rote memorization much more than the US, the way the US is completely fractured over how it teaches, what it teaches, where it teaches. The way US history is taught in the US is completely different in different parts of the US. And what does that reflect? It reflects how ununified we are as a country. So, I would completely agree with that. But I think at the university level, we're a little bit more, sort of by nature, the university system has become much more international. Whether you're doing a postdoc somewhere or you're teaching somewhere else or you're going to conferences, with peers around the world, but it is extremely siloed. I would 100% agree. And I also think, so I was just at the National Immigrant Integration Conference this year. And we're talking a lot about narrative shift, shifting the narrative around immigration, because we're losing, right? We're losing the immigration fight, like just from the work permit to undocumented immigrants, just across the board. And so how do we shift to something that's resonates with more people and gets people's, hearts to change? Because that's the only way, like you said, to change policy. Policy only works if it changes the way people behave. So what can we do to change the narrative, to change how they think, to change how they behave? And so one of the points is dignity. That was a huge part of it, was dignity. And I put in here, Welcome with Dignity is an organization that helps to welcome refugees with resources that primarily accept their dignity as humans and their right to exist, which is something we really struggle with. And another part of it is talking about, I don't remember the other connection I was going to make, but that's something that we will continue, Global Cleveland will specifically continue to work on. And so I would love to share that research as it comes out, because it's through the Butterfly Lab in Boston. And Ashish, I also loved your point about internal migration. Basically whether you're talking village to village, state to state, right? Part of one country to another part of the country, or globally, right? Country to country, we see ourselves reflected in the differences we encounter with other people. And to really look at that through a lens of dignity. I love how you framed that, Camila.
Absolutely.
I think that's I'm going to take that with me for the rest of the day today and continue in my work. So I think we should probably maybe come into some closing statements. Camila, we would love to invite you in person next year. We will be in person in Cleveland for 2022. We would love to invite, and Ashish, I know you've been a part of a couple of our panels this conference. We are so blessed to be introduced to some phenomenal leaders in Bangalore who are, Camila, I think, like reap benefit. I think you would really connect with the work that they're doing. So we would love to see you guys.
Connect,
yeah, I would love to see you guys in Cleveland, and inshallah, I would be able to. We would be able to also visit Helsinki and Bangalore also. So I just want to say, on behalf of Global Cleveland, we thank you, and I'll give you 30 seconds or so to conclude what you'd like to share today. And we can start with Ashish.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Just starting on a lighter note, or ending on a lighter note, I think we had 3 women on panel today, and we just were 2 men, and that's great. It's always great to be on a panel where we have representatives, and diverse panel, and it just gives more insight.
Did I lose him?
Looks like he froze.
Oh, on the last moment.
Okay, we'll see if he comes back. Do you want to share, Camila?
Yeah, sure. Well, we are in this turning point, recovering from COVID. I really hope that whoever is listening, people from different sectors that can really come together and feel themselves as life designers, creating and benefiting from different multiple identities, that we can enrich each other. And so my call to action is that we need to open up this awareness as being, rather than being a local pigeon, to rise like a phoenix and to really be the global actors and unlock opportunities for others anywhere we go, because we need each other to succeed. And I've learned these lessons in Denmark, in Finland, through mentors, through volunteering, civic engagement. And I do believe that these transatlantic networks give us also that push that we are not alone in our communities. We're connected through global connections. And Joe has been really that person that pushed on me to go on forward with what I do, because we amplify each other's voices. So from one library to another, I think that let's be in touch, share connections, and to quote Ashish, to really shape friendships and experiences that really shape us to be better human and global citizens.
Thank you for that beautiful closing. I appreciate you. Appreciate your work very much. And again, anyone watching, you want to get a chance to go to Italy, to Vicenza, the home of Palladio, please visit our website for our 10th anniversary. That's going to be our wonderful prize. And Camila, thank you. And please stay, enjoy the conference today and tomorrow. And we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And Global Dignity Day is on 20th October, so do celebrate.
20th October. Okay.
20th October, Global Dignity.
If there's any social media toolkit that we can use to promote it,
I'll send it to you.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yep. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.